Havoc Demon Hunters have been slowly gliding downhill this season, with the spec having multiple problems as already voiced by many players and creators. The community is desperately hoping for a class rework in the upcoming patch 10.2. I am extremely passionate about Havoc, so I decided to spend a lot of time to think through what that rework could look like, hoping that I can help to make the class better. I identified 4 main points that are necessary to make the spec play well and feel good. Number 1. Short cooldown burst damage. The first cooldowns that come to mind are Fel Barrage and Chaos Blades. These were used in the past to bring success to Havoc in MDI and in other competitive settings. It's no coincidence that every time that Havoc was competitive in MDI, it relied on Fel Barrage. Number 2. Easy target swapping. We do not want any abilities that slow down target swapping, such as maintaining Sinful Brand or carrying over the Serrated Glaive debuff. These either constrain the playstyle or slow it down, not fitting for a Demon Hunter. Number 3. We want low dependency on uptime. Right now, we are mandated to sit in melee range and spam annihilations forever. This is especially not fitting for Havoc. We want to use our cooldowns efficiently and do burst damage, then move out, execute mechanics, and be able to come back and continue DPSing without too much punishment. Number 4. Small windows of opportunity. As an agility/fighting style class, we should be reactive and precise. Managing small windows of opportunity, such as Initiative and Essence Break, can be very fun and rewarding, and I have ideas on how to introduce more of them to make the class even better. There is a lot to cover. Go ahead and tell me in the comments which ideas feel right and which do not. If you know people that play Havoc, please send them the video so they can express their opinion as well. First, we will quickly go over the main problems from Havoc. Then, we will proceed with how to tackle hot topics, such as Demonic, Momentum, and Fury Generation. Finally, we will go over the class and spec trees to check talent rework and reshuffling, as well as introduction of fresh talent ideas to elevate the spec. Let's get started. So, what is the current situation of Havoc? People have been unhappy with how it plays out, but what is exactly the problem? So there is one main issue and some side issues which are also important. The main issue is that our DPS profile is not fitting for either raids or Mythic Plus, and this is the problem that needs to be addressed. On the side notes, we are squishy against burst damage. Our self-healing got nerfed significantly this patch with the HP bump. We have kind of limited utility in Mythic Plus, and the pathing of our talent trees is often blocking us from accessing what we need. So these are all important issues, but let's focus on the main one for starters. So our DPS profile in raids is extremely flat, with severe punishment for downtime. This means that wherever we're targeted by a mechanic, we lose tons of DPS. Moreover, we do not have the ability to provide a lot of burst in a specific boss encounter phase, which is super important for raiding. Moreover, in Mythic Plus, our playstyle only revolves around one burst every 3 minutes with Metamorphosis, and we fall behind in all other situations. This is an extremely constraining playstyle to execute in Mythic Plus, because the tank has to plan the route entirely around that burst, and which is very frustrating. So how do we come to this situation? I think this is primarily realized due to the excessive access to a lot of things. We do have a lot of demon form uptime. We do have a lot of momentum uptime, and we do have tons of Fury Generation. Okay, so this means with talents like Cycle of Hatred, Shattered Destiny, and Momentum, and a lot of Fury Generation talents, we are essentially able to sit in Metamorphosis almost 80% of the time and spam annihilations endlessly without pushing any Fury Generators, and while having momentum up for the entire time. So this leads to our cooldown being weak, because if meta was tuned to be powerful, we would be god spec, like we would be crushing everyone, and that is not okay. So our cooldowns have to be weak. And I argue that if we would have less of everything, then there would be room for Metamorphosis and for Demonic to be way more powerful as a cooldown. So we're actually in a situation where less is more, and we have too much of everything, and we need to reduce that in order to give room to Metamorphosis to be powerful. We could also shift some of our power away from Metamorphosis and introduce other DPS cooldowns to pair with the Demon form to give us access to more frequent burst damage windows. All these changes would lead to a way more spiky DPS profile, which is highly preferred in both M+ and Raids. In M+, you want frequent bursts so you can put pack after pack, burst again and again and keep going into the dungeon. And in Raids, you want a burst DPS profile in order to use it with Bloodlust in a specific phase, whether it's on pull or it's in the execute phase or during a shield phase or something like that, to push damage where you need it the most and not have your damage being flat over the entire encounter, and it might lose you a lot of DPS where it actually matters, even though you are doing a lot of overall. At this stage, if you are enjoying this video, consider dropping a like and maybe even subscribing to the channel for more content from the Feldfire Gaze TV, where we discuss everything about Demon Hunters in World of Warcraft. As we said, right now we have extremely high uptime of Demon form. We can get to close to 70 to 80% in single target. Okay, that's a lot. That's not a cooldown anymore. That's our normal form. So this happens through the interaction of Demonic with Cycle of Hatred and Shattered Destiny. So in order to tackle that, I propose new versions of these talents, and specifically for Shattered Destiny, I would make it no longer be a capstone, but being a 2-point node, which increases the duration of Metamorphosis by 6 seconds and the duration of Demonic by 2 seconds once you put 2 points into it. So the most important part is the second one, which will allow you to have 8-second long Demonic windows, and if you have enough haste, you can fit 2 death sweeps within this window, and this is a significant DPS increase. So this talent will again call for haste stacking in order to achieve it, while no longer allowing you to indefinitely extend Metamorphosis. Now, I'm not a big fan of Cycle of Hatred. I think it should be removed, but in case it stays, I have an alternate version that it's just more static and more fitting to our playstyle. So it's a 2-point node that reduces the cooldown of I-Beam and Essence Break by 10 seconds. So instead of doing an I-Beam Essence Break combo every 40 seconds, you will now be able to do it every 30 seconds. You see, this is not dependent on spamming Chaos Strikes and having uptime all the time, because this does not work. So this would make PvPers happy, because they would be able to do the combo every 30 seconds together with Fell Eruption. Now let's look at some numbers. With the proposed design, if you just play First of the Illidari, you have 20% meta uptime. With Demonic you have 30, and then if you combine Demonic with Cycle of Hatred, you have around 37%. If you combine Demonic with Shattered Destiny, you have a little bit more, around 39, and if you have both of them, you can reach up to 48%. I think this is already a really high number, and I'm not a really big advocate for this number. I think that this build solution, which is close to the BFA build, is the best one. So keep this version of Shattered Destiny and get rid of Cycle of Hatred. But just as a reminder, with the current version of the talents, if we combine this together, we can go up to 70-80%. So we're talking a significant reduction in uptime. And what we expect to earn from this, we expect from Chaos Strike and Annihilation and Blade Dance and Death Sweep to be buffed to do way more damage, because we have way less access to Metamorphosis. The next hot topic of interest is Momentum. Momentum, known as the ability of Demon Hunters to use their movement for damage, and while using Vengeful Retreat or Fell Rush, we gain momentum, so we hit harder. So this has been a very divisive topic for the Havoc community. Some people really hate it, some people really love it. you love it or you hate it, you need to admit that it's a very iconic thing of the class. It's similar to how monks, for example, Windwalker monks use different abilities all the time in order to maintain hit combo. So movement for damage is our form of identity, let's say, as Demon Hunters. It's something very unique and something very interesting to be in the game. However, it comes with a set of problems that we need to take into consideration. To address the elephant in the room, I'm a fan of momentum, but it needs to be changed in order to overcome its challenges. But I think momentum should be in the game, and it should exist in niche situations, be optimal for niche situations. So this means this cannot be bound to single target. I start by saying this. Currently we have infinite fury regeneration while spamming Fell Rush all day. We have low cooldown on Fell Rush due to erratic Fellheart and due to the Evoker buff. So in raids we are expected to Fell Rush on cooldown for the entire fight. Nobody wants to do that, nobody likes that. The best iteration of movement for damage so far, I think, was during Shadowlands, where we got the Unbound Chaos talent. So whenever we Immolation Aura, our next Fell Rush deals a lot of damage. So this was very popular in Shadowlands, it was also very powerful. Some people even disliked that, but it essentially just forced you to use Fell Rush once per Immolation Aura. So it was not too often, but it was still part of the rotation. So to keep a score, let's say it's good when momentum is bound to a cooldown, so you don't spam Fell Rush all day. So like the case with Isolated Prey at the moment. And it is not a good idea to bind momentum to single target damage, because if momentum is optimal for every single raid boss, then eventually there will be bosses where it's impossible to play momentum due to mechanics and positional requirements, and this will ruin the ability. And even in bosses where it's possible to do that, you don't want to really use all your movement for damage. So taking these things into consideration, we need to address the other most important topic, the Fell Rush Fury generation. Okay. Fell Rush generating Fury as a half global essentially invalidates all other Fury generators, and I think that's very bad. That's a topic for the Fury generation part of the video, but all things considered, Fury generation from Fell Rush has to be removed. Like Isolated Prey has to be changed, and this part of Fury generation should move to other Fury generations. So where does this lead in regards to momentum? I propose that momentum should be optimal to lower target count, lower target cleave, let's say. How do I come to that conclusion? So first, if you think about it, Fell Rush and Vengeful Retreat work best in two specific combos. With Fellblade, when you Fell Rush Fellblade, that's an easy one to put through, or with Rogue Glaive, because it's a range ability. So these two abilities work really well with both Fell Rush and Vengeful Retreat. So I propose that momentum is somehow tied to these abilities, and while I was thinking about it, I realized that this is a sub-spec, let's say, within the Havoc spec. It's the spec of the agile assassin who runs around and throws glaives, like this, okay? So I was thinking what else could support this this archetype, let's say, of assassin, and I was immediately thinking about Glaive Tempest. So I think that having this agile assassin that throws and spins glaives and dashes around all the time is a really nice sub-spec to explore, and I think that momentum can be ideal to explore this archetype more, and also have momentum decoupled from single target, so that it can be tuned separately from single target damage. So we'll now proceed to taking a look at the talent changes that I propose to get this playstyle alive. First and foremost, as said already, Isolated Prey will no longer generate Fury with Fell Rush, so the component of Fell Rush will be removed. Other things can be added, but this is a topic for later. Moreover, Unbound Chaos is still an interesting part of movement for damage. I think that it should be buffed a little bit. It's underperforming a little bit right now, and we really liked as a community when it had 20 seconds duration back in the day, because it essentially allows you to store this charge for wherever you need it. But most importantly, since Unbound Chaos is bound to Emulation Aura, you can pop Emulation Aura, stay in melee range for the entire duration, do all the AoE with fire damage, and then Felras out of melee range to cleave with Unbound Chaos. Moreover, we move to one of the bigger changes, let's say, the existing talent, Tactical Retreat. It's renamed to Tactical Maneuvers. It no longer generates Fury. It does something completely different. It now makes Vengeful Retreat and the Hunt reduce the cooldown of Throw Glaive and Glaive Tempest by 5 seconds. So the idea is that you use these abilities to reset both Throw Glaive and Glaive Tempest again and again to have more casts and create an interesting rotation of cooldown reduction, which is really fun for this archetype. And then proceeding with the actual momentum talent, I think it will be best if it's triggered primarily from Vengeful Retreat and Felras, so the Hunt no longer triggers this, because these two abilities will increase the damage of all abilities that are contained in this sub-archetype. So Throw Glaive, Glaive Tempest, Fellblade, and the Hunt. So the Hunt will be buffed by momentum, it will not give you momentum. I think this is a better approach for this to make the Hunt more relevant as well. And I would give momentum a slight increase in its duration, make it a 6-second duration, so that you have a little bit larger of a window to execute your rotation, and give you more opportunity to save some Felras charges for when you need them for actual movement to dodge mechanics or transition from one place to another. Another really important part of the problem is Fury generation. Fury generation has always been a core part of Demon Hunter single target. We had a lot of RNG sources of Fury generation, and we need to manage them properly in order to succeed in single target. Right now that's no longer the case. We have infinite Fury generation just from isolated prey, and we spam Chaos Strike and Annihilation indefinitely, and this makes them do like really low damage, and they feel more like a filler rather than a spender, which is there to reduce the cooldown of I-Beam and extend Metamorphosis. So they don't really do much damage, and that's because we have, again, like I said earlier, infinite access to them, and that's a bad thing. And in order to tackle that, of course, we need to nerf isolated prey, but I don't think that's enough. We need to nerf other Fury generation talents, because right now we have so many Fury generator abilities that we never press. We never press Fellblade, we never press Emulation Aura in single target, we don't press Sigil of Flame. And that's a shame, because we have 3 Fury generators that we never press, and we need to give them some room to breathe and allow for Annihilation and Chaos Strike to hit way harder, because we will have to spend globals on Fury generation, and thus allowing us to have way harder hitting Chaos Strikes and Annihilation. Moreover, I really want to emphasize that I like the souls, the souls as a resource, because they have the unique ability that you can generate them and then you can stand still in order not to consume them and spend your Fury and then consume them later. So it's like a Fury generation that can be delayed in time. I think that's super interesting, and I think that should be part of DH Fury generation, be super relevant, and to manage that in order to succeed, because right now most of the time a lot of souls are spawning and you have already infinite Fury. You gain Fury from your Blind Fury, you gain Fury from your Vengeful Retreat, and while you're generating souls they are mostly wasted. Another thing I would like to note is that I think Fellblade is a super visually appealing ability. Like, you jump through the air, you hit the target, it's so nice to have it incorporated into the rotation, it makes the class look better. So the TLDR is that we need to reduce passive Fury generation and of course nerf isolated prey, and we want to buff Chaos Strike. So we have to press Fury generators like Sigil, Fellblade and Immolation Aura in our rotation to manage our Fury properly and cast less Chaos Strikes, which are way more powerful. That's the TLDR. And we're gonna go through some talents that will allow us to do so. At this point, I might be repeating myself, but the first thing we need to nerf is Isolated Prey, and we need to remove the Ferrous component that generates rage. That's out of the question. Moreover, we have already talked about Tactical Retreat, which has been redesigned. It no longer generates Fury, it does something completely different with cooldown reduction to throw Glaive and Glaive Tempest. Then we have Chaos Theory, which used to give extra Fury. The Chaos Strike will always refund Fury. I have removed this part and replaced it with extra critical damage on your next Chaos Strike. So Chaos Theory becomes a pure damage talent and no longer assists with Fury generation. Moreover, we have Burning Hatred. This talent has been moved to the class tree and is now a choice node with Fellblade. So you have to either pick Fellblade or pick Burning Hatred. So this leaves you with one less option for Fury generation. Moreover, there is one more nerf with Blind Fury. I always thought that having Blind Fury give you more Fury than your max Fury was kind of dull, because it makes you waste Fury by design, and I never liked that. Its Fury generation part has been nerfed, and I would nerf it a little bit more, from 40 per second to 30 per second when you have both points. And here you see it also gives a 100% critical strike chance to I-Beam, because this talent is merged with Looks Can Kill. We will get through that later. So even less Fury generation here. So all these things are targeted primarily at single target, where you have to manage Fury generation by pressing your generators. There are also some buffs. We bring back an old a version, let's say, of an old Azarite trait called Revolving Blades. So Blade Dance will generate 5 Fury for each target stuck by the final slash. So this is a buff to Fury generation in AoE. So if you have 10 targets, Blade Dance will now generate Fury instead of costing Fury overall, because it will generate 50 Fury back and only cost 35. But this is specifically targeted to AoE, because AoE Fury generation will be impacted as well, and this will help to alleviate some of that impact. And then there is a new node in the Havoc Tree, we will see that right away, called Sigil of Flame. So there is a second place in our tree where we get Sigil of Flame. So we have one in the class tree and one in the Havoc Tree, and this is taking a page out of Sabrog's book. So this node will give you Sigil of Flame, and if you already know it, it will give you a second charge and increase its damage by 25%. So this behaves similar to how Shadow Dance behaves for Sabrog, where you have one talent in the class tree and one talent in the spec tree, and picking both of them will give you 2 charges of the ability and will also buff it. So this will help do more AoE damage, of course, in uncapped situations. That's another thing, but it will give you an extra charge of Fury generator, especially from range. So let's say you play single target and you are forced out of melee range due to a mechanic, you have 2 charges of Sigil of Flame to generate Fury for you while you are out of melee range dealing with the mechanic. So you see here we shift Fury generation away from passive sources and we shift it towards active sources. So you actually have to press Fury generation abilities to manage your Fury properly. And a final reminder, all this approach calls for a buff to Chaos Strike and Annihilation. We spend less globals pressing them, so they should be doing more damage. That's the whole idea with the Fury generation changes. Now that we've covered the hot topics, let's say, of addressing the challenges of Havoc at the moment, we can now go through the talent trees and we can look at the current version of the talent tree and move a little bit node by node and talk about what has been removed or changed, and then we will proceed with checking out the new version of the talent tree after rearranging all the talents and stuff. So here to the left we see the existing talent tree you see that 4 nodes have been completely removed, marked with a red cross on top of them, and some other nodes have had a special treatment, let's say, so that's why they're bound by an orange circle. So we will go one by one with what happened to this node. So we're talking about moved or removed talents or special treatments. Let's say this is the more big picture stuff for the current tree. So Fellow Eruption. Fellow Eruption has been made baseline. This is the only ability that has been made baseline from the current situation of Havoc. It does not fit the design somewhere else. I think it's a core part of Havoc's utility, let's say, control, and other classes get their CC for free, and I think Havoc should have a similar treatment. Moving on, we have Burning Hatred to the right, which has been moved to the class tree, and it's a choice node with Fellblade. So you can, again, like what you did in the past, choose Burning Hatred and pair it with Insatiable Hunger here to have to use Demon's Bite instead of Demon's Blades, and go for a more methodical Fury Generation approach, which you control, or you can stick with Fellblade and Demon Blades and have the RNG based approach with the Fellblade procs. Moreover, we have improved Fellrush, which has been removed. We talked about momentum and its redesign, and I don't think that the Fellrush damage per se is gonna be the most interesting part of movement for damage. The Fellrush damage has been incorporated in the Unbound Chaos talent. I don't think this talent is any useful and it should be removed. Moreover, Lux Can Kill. It has been merged with Blind Fury because this is a little bit of a weird talent. It's a little bit of weak. It's in a weird spot, and I think it does not serve the purpose of the new talent tree. Finally, Serrated Glaive. Serrated Glaive is a maintenance buff, which is not really interesting for an agility class which needs to be fast-paced, reactive, precise and stuff. It's something that you just maintain, and when you change target you bring it over there, you spend the global and stuff. I have removed Serrated Glaive from the talent tree, and I proposed a new talent instead, because Serrated Glaive, what it did essentially was promote the usage of Throw Glaive in single targets. So I have a new talent that promotes the usage of Throw Glaive in single target instead, which I think fits the Havoc fantasy way better. Then we have Isolated Prey. We talked about it a lot. It's changed. It's still in the tree. It serves a kind of different purpose than what it does right now, but it's still in the tree. But it's an honorable mention at this point. And then we have Cycle of Hatred, which has been removed here at the bottom of the tree. I don't think this kind of playstyle is interesting and fitting for the class, because it forces the severe punishment of downtime, and Havoc, having all this mobility, is very good at jumping in and out of melee range to do mechanics and come back, so this does not fit. Then we have Fodder to the Flame. I really think Fodder to the Flame should be a PvP talent. I have moved it away. It's interactions in PvP where the demon hits you and it breaks CC. It's super interesting, it's super nice, but in PvE it has such a large impact, and it's so annoying to have it or not have it during your burst window. Makes such a huge difference, and it's super annoying for everyone involved, let's say. So I think Fodder to the Flame should be a PvP talent. And then we have Elysian Decree, which is also moved from here. It's moved to the class tree, and we will talk about it a little bit later, but it's no longer part of the Havoc tree. So this will also impact Vengeance. Both Fodder and Elysian have been moved from the spec tree. Fodder became a PvP talent, and Elysian has moved to the class tree. So this is something that should be taken into consideration for Vengeance as well. Finally, we're here. The new Havoc tree. We will walk top to bottom and discuss the different talents and what changes have been made to them and how they are rearranged to allow for better pathing throughout the tree. So here we start with High Beam, and we branch into Improved Chaos Strike and First Blood. So let's say we have this side is Chaos Strike related and this side is Blade Dance related. So First Blood, a small change. It does extra damage to the primary target and not the first target, in order for us to be able to target which mob is the most important and will be hit with the extra damage. So Now these two talents now lead to two fury generators. On the one we have the souls, and on the other one we have the revolving blades, which allows blade dance to generate 5 fury for this target stack in AoE. So these are two kind of fury generators, one for single target, one for AoE. They also lead to the critical chaos here and the dance with fate talents. Now these two talents were previously positioned one step lower, and that was a little bit annoying because they were, let's say, gatekeeping the entire tree, because these nodes are extremely central to the tree because they gatekeep everything, and these two talents here were a little bit annoying. They were doing the gatekeeping. If you want, so in the new version, if you want to invest into these talents, you can do that, but you don't have to go through them in order to advance in the tree. Having that in mind, two different talents have been put into these positions because these are so central nodes. I chose Initiative and Trail of Ruin on purpose. I chose these two talents to be positioned in these key nodes because whatever spec you play, most likely you want both Initiative and Trail of Ruin. So it will not block any spell from further progressing through the tree or force them to spend points on something they do not want. So it's worth noting that we have a small change in Initiative. So Initiative now activates when you hit a target for the first time, regardless of whether they hit you or not. This part here is very annoying, especially in bosses with ticking damage. You cannot control it, and it's very frustrating to play around. So this part has been changed. Here it's a little bit of an OCD change from 12% to 15%, critical strike to be nice and round. And finally, Initiative also incorporates the cooldown reduction of Vengeful Retreat. So this one used to be part of Tactical Retreat here to the bottom, and now it's incorporated in Initiative because I think that you should be able to have the 20-second Vengeful Retreat to pair with Essence Break, regardless of whether you go down the momentum path or not. So you should have the ability to not go down this path, have a 20-second Vengeful Retreat, and always line it up with Essence Break. Another interesting note you might saw here is that Netherwalk has been moved to this part of the tree, so it's super easily accessible. Like almost every build will go for First Blood, single target builds would go for improved Chaos Strike, and this also serves as a central node that allows you to transition from the left to the right side of the tree easily without having to pick the other talents. So it only gatekeeps the Mortal Dance, which is the healing reduction for PvP, but I think that's fair because this is a very important node for PvP and most PvPers would like to pick this anyway. So it's, if people remember, it's still a choice node, right? It's not just Netherwalk. Desperate Instinct still exists, right? Although they have never been picked ever. So we gotta do something about it. Now we gotta buff the blur damage reduction a little bit because I think 10% is a little bit too low. At least 15%, maybe 20, I don't know, to make it like really relevant, and really remove this part with triggering blur automatically. So you have a very simple choice node which says, do you want a better blur or do you want Netherwalk? That's a very straightforward choice, and depends on encounter and stuff and what you want to do. It's very central, it's very easily accessible, and it allows you to transition from one part of the tree to the other. Then we move, let's say, after we've passed this initial part, we have, let's say, the Chaos Strike related talents and the Blade Dance related talents, and then we have 5 big lines of talents here. So we have, let's say, the movement for damage, the Chaos Strike talents, the Eye Beam talents, the Throw Glaive talents, and the Immolation Aura talents. So we will go through these lines one by one and see potential changes, but this is the idea that these different lines are dedicated to one specific playstyle and they lead you down to more interesting, let's say, nodes, and we do no longer scatter these talents around the talent tree, so you have to traverse different routes at the same time to achieve a simple playstyle, let's say. So they are all clumped up together in these lines, and we will go through them one by one. First, we have the movement for damage line. So here you see at the top of the line we have the Glaive Tempest, which has been made really available here, moved from down here up to here. I think that's a good change. It's a Fury spender. It's a really interesting ability because you have to take into consideration the position of the mobs and whether they will be moved or not. So it's kind of a different flavor added to the spec, easily accessible to every kind of build, let's say directly branched from initiative. And also it's positioned here because the momentum talents that will follow buff this ability, and they also buff Throwglaive. Throwglaive is not really useful unless you have invested talents here. So in order to make this momentum nodes doing something be useful guarantee, you put Glaive Tempest here to gatekeep them. So you never get these momentum talents unless you already have Glaive Tempest. And these momentum talents will buff Glaive Tempest, so they make sense. And if you want to invest extra into Throwglaive, then you get even more value out of momentum. But both alternatives are available. So the changes that we already discussed regarding momentum is the Unbound Chaos. It's buffed a little bit because it's a little bit underperforming at the moment, and its duration is increased to 20 seconds to better let you manage simulation or duration. Then you have the Tactical Retreat, which is renamed to Tactical Maneuvers. It reduces the cooldown of Glaive Tempest and Throwglaive, which makes for an interesting CDR playstyle. And you have Momentum, which buffs Throwglaive, Glaive Tempest, Fellblade, and the Hunt. So you have this move in and out playstyle. You drop the Glaive Tempest, you Vengeful Retreat out, you Throwglaive, then you hunt back in, you reduce the cooldown of Glaive Tempest, and you press it again, and you send more Throwglaives, and you have this let's say agile stuff of jumping in and out and cleaving low targets with your Fellow Rushes, Vengeful Retreats, Glaive Tempest, Throwglaive, and the Hunt. So you achieve this through the first line. Now the second line is primarily focused on single target, and it revolves around Chaos Strike. So as a first node, it's a kind of interesting node, the Seething Power. It's an old Azerite trait where Chaos Strike increases your agility by X. I don't know what the correct number for this would be, for 15 seconds. And if you press more Chaos Strikes, you get 2 times X, 3 times X, you get a lot of agility, but the effect does not extend. So you have a 15-second window to pop as many Chaos Strikes as possible to get extra agility and spend it on other abilities and buff them, let's say. So it's a small mini game that you need to be aware all the time. It's something that can be tiresome for some players. I think this position is really nice because if you don't really like this kind of playstyle, you can branch around it. But if you are really into min-maxing, this is something that can be extremely interesting with pulling Fury and delaying your globals for 1-2 seconds and then smashing everything into Seething Power and getting this extra agility boost and yeah, popping off. Then the Relentless Onslaught has been moved here. It has been made into a 2-point node with Chaos Strike having a up to 20% chance to trigger a second Chaos Strike. I think with the overall changes to Fury generation, with having less Chaos Strikes and more powerful Chaos Strikes, this can be way more fun, let's say, talent, because you will be way more happy when you trigger a second Chaos Strike. You will feel the damage if the Chaos Strike is something that's not completely expendable and spammable 24/7. You will be super happy to get an extra Chaos Strike, and I think that this is a really fun talent. Let's say it reminds a little bit of the Elemental Shaman, Elemental Overload, when you get double lava burst and stuff, and you are happy because you are doing damage. Because right now you won't even notice Relentless Onslaught. Chaos Strike does nothing. If you buff it enough and make it count, this can be a really fun talent. Then we move on to Chaos Theory, which has been changed slightly. It no longer helps with Fury generation, and it gives extra critical damage to Chaos Strike. So it's a pure damage buff, and keep that in mind because it can be paired with a talent that we'll be discussing soon. Now here I introduced a new talent called Sharpened Glaives, which increases the critical strike chance of Glaive Tempest, Chaos Strike, and Blade Dance by 10%. So if you remember, here we had this weird path of Isolated Prey to Chaos Theory, and we were struggling to get into Essence Break for a non-pure single target and without going through momentum. So this is a very solid talent, and serves as a bridge, let's say, between the Chaos Strike part here and the critical damage part that comes with Know Your Enemy down here. So this is a smooth transition between these two lines and the Know Your Enemy, let's say, pre-capstone trait. Now we have a new choice node here, because we've moved Glaive Tempest and Felbaraz away. As you see, Felbaraz is right here. We'll talk about it later. And we have two abilities. We have Chaos Cleave. Chaos Cleave is known; it's an old trait. And I introduced an alternation here, where Chaos Strike costs 10 additional Fury, but also deals 40% of its damage to a second nearby target. So this talent significantly increases your cleave, your two-target cleave, but it also makes Chaos Strike cost more Fury, which means if you have a fight, let's say, with adds spawning and you can cleave them, okay, you're good. While you have the extra targets, you get a lot of value from this talent. But while you're hitting a single target, you get nothing from this, and Chaos Strike costs a little bit more. Okay, so you're losing single target, but you are increasing your cleave at the same time. So it's a trade-off, and you need to find niche situations where this is good enough. And now, when I was thinking about Chaos Theory as well, I was thinking that in Mythic Plus, maybe you can pick this as a spec that does not spam so many Chaos Strikes, so you don't get punished by this extra cost as much. And then you have a Chaos Theory. You buff your next Chaos Strike, you do the Blade Dance, you buff your next Chaos Strike, and you only press this one Chaos Strike with Chaos Cleave. So you do increased crit damage and critical strike chance, and you hit two targets. And you don't spam Chaos Strike otherwise, like you spend your Fury on Blade Dance, maybe Throw Glaive, maybe Glaive Tempest, and you only Chaos Strike after the Chaos Theory proc. It's a theory, it's something to be explored. Then we have Isolated Prey. Like I said, when it no longer generates Fury through Ferrous, this is completely removed. And now it also affects Immolation Aura, so it continues to increase I-beam damage and also affects Immolation Aura with the following part. The first tick of Immolation Aura increases fire damage taken by the target by 10% for 8 seconds. So this is another small window of opportunity, like Initiative and like Essence Break. You need to be aware of this and try to stack damage in this small window of opportunity. This will encourage you to use Immolation Aura in single target, perhaps not on cooldown, perhaps you want to save it a little bit to align this extra buff with maybe your I-beam or something else you want to pop. Remember, fire damage here, it's extra fire damage. Chaos damage is also fire damage, so this buffs chaos damage as well, if it makes sense. Moving on, we have the I-beam line here. A chaotic transformation remains unchanged. Like I said earlier, Blind Fury has been moved here, directly transitioning from chaotic transformation, and it's merged with Luke's Can Kill. So it generates a little bit less Fury here, like I said earlier, with the nerfed Fury generation from passive sources, and it gives you 100% critical strike chance if you play both nodes. So maybe you want to only play one, like we have 50% critical strike chance on your own, and you get another 50 from here, and you're good. Maybe you don't care to go further. That's also an option for someone to consider. And then I have added this little line here, allowing you to go for the straight I-beam line, like transitioning from Blind Fury to the 10% haste. What's the name? Furious Gaze. Transition directly to Furious Gaze without having to go through either Relentless Onslaught or Soul Rend, which has been moved here, because you might don't want to do that, and you might want to just go for the straight I-beam expansion. Now moving on here, the Relentless Hunter and the Inner Demon are unchanged, and as you see, Shattered Destiny has been moved a little bit higher, and as discussed earlier, it is no longer extending metamorphosis indefinitely. It's static. It increases the duration for 6 seconds for metamorphosis and 2 seconds for demonic, in order to emphasize that you stack haste and you are able to get 2 death sweeps within the demonic window. This is a way more healthy way of promoting haste, to try to fit more globals in a specific window rather than trying to extend the cooldown forever to the point that it's no longer a cooldown. And now this other destiny leads to our new capstone, Chaos Blades. I have checked the old versions of Chaos Blades and I've redesigned them a little bit, drawing some inspiration from Doomwinds, if I might say. So this is a talent about auto attack damage. So increases your auto attack damage by 150% and make them do chaos damage. And now I baked in the original Shattered Destiny design, where you have to spend as much fury as possible in a small window. So for every 30 fury you spend during Chaos Blades, your attack speed is increased by 15%. It lasts 15 seconds and has 1.5 minute cooldown. So you enter Chaos Blades, you want to enter with a full fury bar, you start spamming like there is no tomorrow. So it's similar with the old Shattered Destiny, where you had to spend fury quickly in order to extend I-beam, but now you spend fury to increase your attack speed. While increasing your attack speed, you do more auto attacks. More auto attacks mean more chaos damage that they are dealing. At the moment, when you play with Demon Blades, you will also get more Demon Blade procs, so it leads to even more fury generation, especially towards the end of your Chaos Blades window, where you will significantly notice the difference in fury generation, and you will be able to essentially spam Chaos Strike all the time, at the especially towards the end of the window, where it will feel similar to what Chaos Theory felt in Shadowlands, where you had infinite fury generation and you were spamming Chaos Strike for a certain amount of time. So this is a pure single target talent. You see, it all has to do with auto attack damage, so perhaps having an enhancement summon with Wind Fury might be super relevant to this talent. And it has a 1.5 minute CD. It's intentional to line it up with Metamorphosis, so we're, let's say, committing, quote unquote, on a 3-minute Metamorphosis, and you have this every 1.5 minutes. It's a small window of opportunity, like we said, it's 15 seconds. You don't have to have uptime all day. You need to find a window of 15 seconds to push your damage, and you're done with it, and then you use it again in 1.5 minutes. So I think this will feel really good. It will serve the purpose of having burst damage to pair with Metamorphosis, and use it when we need it during a burst phase in single target. And there is scaling with haste, because you auto attack more and you use more globals, so there is haste scaling. There is also scaling with mastery, because these things do chaos damage, so this is also important. There is a little bit less scaling with crit, because okay, you want this to crit, of course it's extra damage, but it's not specifically related to critical strike. And perhaps with critical chaos you can generate even more fury, so that's even more important, so that you can spam more chaos strikes and spend as much fury as possible during Chaos Blades to do maximum auto attack damage. So this is the capstone, and here we have another choice node with 2 new talents leading from Inner Demon here. So the first talent is Fell Scar. I-beam brands your primary target with a Fell Scar for 1 minute. An enemy can have up to 5 Fell Scars at a time. Throwglaive makes 1 Fell Scar burst, dealing X chaos damage to the target. Now, hear me out. I had a little bit of Frost Decay Cold Hard in mind, where they press Chains of Ice once every 40 seconds to do big damage. This is kind of similar, because you use I-beam once every 40 seconds and you put a Fell Scar on the target, okay? And then you throw Glaive once and you burst that Fell Scar. So that's like you throw Glaive once every 40 seconds on single targets. So this is the replacement of Serrated Glaive. you throw glaive one time per I-beam to do some extra damage. Okay, that's kind of boring. That's nothing super special. Like you throw glaive and once every 40 seconds and you do some extra damage. But this talent gives you some other opportunities as well. So you can I-beam one target, you have primary target, let's say the boss, and then maybe you have later on primary target an ad that spawns. So you have one Fellscar on the boss, one Fellscar on the ad, and you can burst them both with one throw glaive. That's one opportunity. Another opportunity is that you stack the Fellscars on the boss, because you have I-beam every 40 seconds and the Fellscars last for 1 minute. So if you want, you can stack them on the boss and not pop them right away. So this gives you two options. First, if you are forced out of melee range due to a mechanic, you have the option to now burst the Fellscars while doing the mechanic. You can throw glaives and do damage from ranged as if you were still in melee, because you have the Fellscars stacked from before, if you choose to do so. Other than that, it gives you the opportunity to store this damage for later. So if you have a specific phase of the boss that requires a lot of burst, maybe you want to destroy a shield, maybe there is an execute phase, maybe there is a phase of the boss that has a damage amplification, you can store these Fellscars and burst them at that specific time. So this is a very versatile talent. The most simple use is I-beam and throw a glaive out away and burst the Fellscar. Okay, but you have so many options to use this talent, and I think this is way more versatile and healthy for Havoc than serrated glaive, in order to encourage throw glaive usage in single target. And then I have a second new talent called Flames of the Purgatory. Any soul fragments absorbed during immolation aura explodes in screaming agony, dealing X fire damage to all nearby enemies. Deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So this has a little bit of an edgy text here, because we are demon hunters and we like that. So you absorb the soul fragments and you make them explode. So you want to generate soul fragments during immolation aura. You can do it in some ways. We will go through that later. And deal AoE damage. So this is catered towards large pools because it deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So this is, let's say, leaning towards the right side of the tree, which has to do with immolation aura and high target count DPS. So this will give souls a purpose in AoE as well, because as of now souls are used by Vengeance to heal themselves and are used by Havoc for healing, of course, and for Fury generation in single target. So this is never used in AoE really, and I think that such a talent, Flames of Purgatory, could give an outlet for AoE Demon Hunter specs as well to use the souls, which I think are a fantastic mechanic, and it will open up more opportunities for AoE in a specific window of opportunity. Again, you have like the 12 seconds of immolation aura to consume as many souls as possible to do burst AoE damage. You need to take advantage of this window of opportunity to do max AoE damage. Moving on, we have the throw glaive line. Let's say here there is no changes here, it's only a reshuffling of the talents. So here we have the Furious Throws, and then we have Soul Rend here, because Soul Rend really made no sense down here. It was gatekeeping any means necessary, while it does not get any benefit from it, and it was in a very weird position, and I think it fits way better here, leading up to accelerated glaive. So this is just a positional change, and Burning Wound has been moved down here, and I think this is the correct position for this node to be, because it lies in the interaction of the throw glaive line and the immolation aura line. Okay, so this is where these two lines meet, and this talent involves both throw glaive and immolation aura, so this is its rightful place. So there's no changes here in any of these talents, it's just repositioning. And then we move on with the last line, which is the, let's say, uncapped damage or high target count with immolation aura and Sigil of Flame. Like I said earlier, there is a new node here which lets you to learn Sigil of Flame, and if you already know that, you gain a second charge and increase its damage by 25%. And Sigil of Flame, as we will see, as we remember in the class tree, we also have the soul sigils which let it generate souls, and maybe these souls can be used with Flames of the Purgatory, and opens up more opportunities for mass AoE damage and even from range. And I think that's something that's important, that's very useful, and will help us do more AoE fire damage and encourage specs with any means necessary, which, as you see, it's right here. We'll talk about it in a second. There are no changes here again, like Growing Inferno remains unchanged. It's a nice talent. This is Felfire Heart, which has been moved from up here down here, all with each other fire damage brothers, let's say, in this fire damage archetype, leading into Rage Fire, which is the more niche, let's say, talent. It's primarily good for really high target count, while this could be used for lower target count combined with Burning Wound, maybe. And all this leads to Any Means Necessary, which is essentially unchanged, but it's just no longer a capstone. It has been moved one point higher, and it's now a 2-point node. It does the exact same thing. Your elemental spells, fire, nature, etc. Are dealt as chaos damage instead, and are increased by 40/80% of your mastery. So this remains unchanged, but it now costs 2 points instead of 1, but it's no longer a capstone. So it's here. So we have, let's say, an even line of things between Know Your Enemy, which encourages critical strike stacking. We have Shelter Destiny in its new form, which again encounters haste stacking, and then we have Any Means Necessary, which encourages mastery stacking, all being 2-point nodes, and then we have 3 capstones, all being active abilities. I think this is a way nicer design for the tree to actually also look like it's visually appealing, but also to function, most importantly. Like right now we have the last capstone, which is Fel Barrage. Fel Barrage is largely unchanged. It does a lot of fel damage over fel energy, chaos damage over 3 seconds. It deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets, and an extra effect was added to it. It's increasing their chaos damage taken by 20% for 8 seconds. So Fel Barrage not only does huge damage, it also increases the damage of your other chaos damage abilities, allowing for a huge burst window, let's say. Again, it's for 8 seconds. It's under the same umbrella of window of opportunity design, where you need to capitalize on those 8 seconds to pop as much damage as you can. So it's on a 1.5 minute cooldown, similar to what we said before. This lines up with Metamorphosis and with I-Beam, which is around 40 seconds, which is close to 45. So you can I-Beam Essence Break perhaps every second Fel Barrage and stuff. Moreover, we need to note that Fel Barrage needs to be buffed and do a lot of damage. Like it has served Havoc a lot in the past. It was actually the way that Havoc made it into some MDI combos. I think Fel Barrage should be something that people know of. It's very iconic when you float in the air and you hit chaos energy to everyone, and something that should make your team comfortable, that they know that you have Fel Barrage and they're confident pulling big, and they're confident that you will smash the pool. It's something to play around, like something like Combustion, something like a very powerful cooldown. Everybody knows about it, and everybody even tries to play into it because you can really use it and destroy mobs. And also note that Any Means Necessary now naturally leads into Fel Barrage, because it makes most of your fire damage and stuff do chaos damage instead, and they are now buffed by Fel Barrage. So this is a smooth transition from Any Means Necessary to Fel Barrage, completely different from the old design where we had Soul Rend leading into Any Means Necessary, which do not really synergize with each other. In a similar fashion to what we did before with the spec tree, we will now go over the class tree. In its current version, we will have a bird's eye view of the changes that happened, and then we will go through the changed nodes one by one and discuss the changes. So here again we have some nodes that are removed. Let's say you will see the red cross on them. and we have some nodes that have some sort of special treatment, so they are bound, let's say, by the orange circles. You see them here. So we will quickly go through what happened to these nodes. So first one is here, the Fellblade node. It has changed because Aura of Pain, which increases the critical strike chance of Immolation Aura, has been removed, and it has been replaced with Burning Hatred from the Havoc Tree, which now gives Immolation Aura Fury Generation, extra Fury Generation. Moreover, we have the Lost in Darkness trait. This has, I doubt this has ever been used, so this should be removed. Like, this really offers nothing to the tree, and it has been removed. Moreover, we have the Infernal Armor, which aim to give some physical damage mitigation to Havoc. It was not very successful, maybe at Ventus as well. It was not very successful, and I have provided an alternative to this one. Then we move on with the Aldrachi design, which has also been removed. I think it's a very boring talent giving flat parry chance. To be honest, I think that the symmetrical talent, which gives mastery, I don't remember the name, is also very boring. I just did not have any good suggestion on what to do with it, so that's why it's still here. If you have a good suggestion on how to remove this and make it more interesting, I'll be all ears. Moreover, I removed Demon Muzzle from the tree because I don't think using sigils for defense is a nice design. I think that sigils should be used for damage and fury generation and souls generation with soul sigils. So they have a more of an aggressive role to play rather than a defensive one, and we can use other sources to get defense. So I removed Demon Muzzle. I don't think it really fits well in the tree. Then we have the Unnatural Malice / Relentless Pursuit here in the hunt. This does not fit in the current design. It's not a terrible node, it's something completely non-impactful and does not alter the playstyle at all. Relentless Pursuit is not ever picked. Unnatural Malice is just a flat damage increase. This has also been removed. And then you see that all the sigil talents have been bound by orange circles, let's say, because we have a general sigil talents rearrangement, because I don't think that everything in here fits very well, so I just made some overall changes to the sigils in the tree. Most of them are still here, just merged or altered a little bit, worked around, moved positions and stuff, but they are all still here, all along Elysian Decree, which Elysian Decree has been moved from the Havoc Tree here, and you will see it in the next screenshot. It's here at the bottom. It's a capstone to compete with other things, and I think this makes sense. It's a shared ability between Vengeance and Havoc. All the sigil stuff is here. This is the right side is the sigil side, and I think that this side should smoothly lead into Elysian Decree. And then a newcomer, we have Reverse Magic. Reverse Magic is a PvP talent currently, which allows Demon Hunters to dispel their allies in melee range. I noted earlier that Havoc specifically has a little bit of lacking utility in Mythic Plus. This season made it clear how powerful Mass Dispel can be in certain situations, and the Priest has been the only class with access to such a mechanic. And regardless of whether you like Havoc or Demon Hunter or whatever, another class has to compete with Priest in that manner, because Priest is mandatory in so many dungeons in the current season, and this has been the case in the past. Wherever Master Spell is useful, it's extremely useful. So Demon Hunter, I think, is a natural choice to compete with Priests in that domain, because the talent is already implemented. The Reverse Magic is already in the game. It has been for so long, and I suggest that we move it from the PvP talents to the class tree. And essentially we traded fodder to the flame for Reverse Magic through these changes, and we have to make appropriate changes to incorporate it into the PvE scene as well. But I think that it's something that could give Demon Hunters a lot of room to grow, and could make our Priest brothers a little bit less competitive, because right now they have total exclusivity to this kind of mechanic, which I think is not healthy for the game. Moving on, we will walk through the new class tree and check the new talents and their altered versions and what they can provide. So I will start by these two talents here, Disrupting Fury and Swallowed Anger. These are talents that are mostly not picked because our tree is very tight, but I think they could be picked more now that we have more reasons for soul generation, because I created new versions of these talents that instead of generating fury, they now generate a soul fragment. And this can be interesting for vengeance, for healing. This can be interesting for havoc, for fury generation, or for AoE damage during immolation aura with a new talent. Now here we have a new talent. Maybe you recognize this icon, maybe not. Just for the memes, I named it after my channel, Fellfire Gaze. But I think this is a talent that can replace the original Infernal armor and specifically help Demon Hunters deal with burst damage. Only with burst damage, which we are extremely squishy against right now. So what does this do? It's a 2-point node. Enemies within 30 yards have their vigor depleted by the sheer Fellfire look of your spectral sight, reducing the damage of their next direct attack against you by 15%. Last 3 seconds. So this talent makes you use spectral sight as a defensive. It will only reduce the damage taken from one attack. Only one attack. And the enemy has to be within 30 yards because you activate your spectral sight, your eyes grow green and they are scary as hell, and the enemy is scared and their attack is, let's say, kind of misfiring, and they're doing less damage. So think bosses like the first boss of Neltharion's Lair, where they have one big AoE burst damage that hits for a lot, and you can use spectral sight to reduce only that attack. I think this is at a similar power level with Rogue's how it's called, it's Fade, and Priest's Feint. Priest's Feint reduces damage taken by 10% for 10 seconds, if I'm not mistaken, with a 30-second cooldown similar to Spectral Sight. So it's a 10% damage reduction for an entire 10 seconds. This is 15% damage reduction for one attack. And the Rogue's Fade, it's a 40% damage reduction, but only works for AoE attacks. So this works for single target as well. So think second boss of Freehold. You are targeted by Eudora's aimed shot, power shot, how it's called, I don't remember. The targeted single target attack. You can use Spectral Sight to mitigate that by 15%. I think this is a very nice talent. Actually, I think this is the best talent I came up with, because it helps you target specifically burst damage. It cannot be utilized by Vengeance as a all-around damage reduction, let's say. It can be used by Vengeance for specific targeted attacks, and it can be an integral part of their toolkit should they need it. I think it has a lot of nice fantasy behind it, that you scare the enemy with the Fellfire look of the Demon Hunter, and it utilizes a long forgotten spell, Spectral Sight, and it brings it back into the picture. And I think this could be an amazing talent to introduce into the class tree. Then we have Will of the Illidari and Illidari Knowledge. These nodes have been very annoying because they are 2-point nodes, and they again gatekeep almost the entire bottom side, at least the right and the left, the two sides to the right and the left. And I made them 1-point nodes and reduced their effect by a little bit, so instead of 6% they now give 5%. They're more efficient, of course, but maybe they need more nerf. I don't know, I don't mind. The main point is that they block the path and you have to spend too many points on it, and that's not ideal at all. And now here we see to the left, you see the hand has been moved down here, so it's on the bottom below Erratic Fellheart. So this is the high movement side, let's say, high movement speed, more movement side, if you want to call it, and this directly plays into the momentum play style that we introduced in the Havoc Tree. And here to the right we have the Sigil side, and we have Elysian Decree, and Collective Anguish has been moved to the middle. So you have these two old Class Covenant abilities competing with each other, from the mobility side, from the sigil side, and in the middle you have a more, let's say, overall good approach, good talent, that's interesting for both Havoc and Vengeance. And you have the two support talents here to the right and to the left, Darkness and Reverse Magic. We will go through them as well. So we'll start by checking the sigil side. Here you might see some changes up here as well. So we start by the extended sigils. Extended sigils was initially positioned down here. It has been moved up here, and it's 1 point now instead of 2, and increases the sigil duration by 2 seconds. Of course, it will be nerfed in PvP like it is at the moment, but the main point here is that you want to split this effect of extra 2-second duration of sigils from the concentrated and precise sigils. So concentrated and precise sigils force you to target the sigils in a specific manner. This can be simulated with macros even if you are not spec'd into them. At the moment, everyone specs into this choice node because they want the extra sigil duration, and I don't think that should be the case. This alternation, whether someone likes it, it's more friendly for newer players, should exist in the tree. It can be a side node here, but it should be separate from the actual output effect with sigil duration, which is achieved through the extended sigils. So as you see here in the tree, you have 2 extra seconds of sigils here, and you have the choice node for concentrated or precise sigils to the right. Moving on, we still have the soul sigils down here. I think this is a fantastic talent to be in place. We removed Aldrachi design here. Soul sigils makes sigils generate soul fragments, and now even as Havoc you have ways to translate these soul fragments into AoE damage with Flames of the Purgatory, and that's super nice. And then I have merged the last 2 talents, which is Quicken Sigil, and it was the original extended sigils. So the new talent is called Empowered Sigils. It's a kind of powerful talent. It's a 2-point node, increases sigil duration by 2 seconds, make them activate 1 second faster, and cool down 20% faster. So everything is merged into this talent. So the original 3 nodes that were here are now accessed with 2 nodes, and this now leads directly to Elysian Decree. Okay, which Elysian Decree also generates souls that can also be used for Flames of the Purgatory. So I think sigils have a nice interaction with Immolation Aura, which is natural because they both do uncapped fire damage, and they can be buffed by any means necessary and Felt Barrage, and have a whole archetype of their own, let's say, on that side of the tree, of the Havoc tree. Moving on, we have Reverse Magic with some slight changes to incorporate it into the PvE scene. So Reverse Magic needs your ally to be in melee range. That's a little bit unfortunate for PvE. So its base radius is now increased to 10 yards. It has a small radius around the Demon Hunter. It has 1 minute cooldown. Reverse Magic in PvP currently not only dispels the debuffs from your ally, but if possible it reverses them back. So if a mage sips your healer and you Reverse Magic, you sip the mage. Okay, this part of the spell would be extremely problematic in PvE. It would be a nightmare to balance, because you could maybe, like Warrior Spell Reflect, you could reverse the dots from targets and reverse them back to the boss for infinite damage, and this would be a nightmare to balance. So remove this reverse effect, just make the talent dispel, nothing else. So you have now an upgrade choice node. So you either increase the radius to 20 yards, so it'd be similar with Mass Dispel, a large circle with 20 yard radius, or you decrease its cooldown by 15 seconds, so it drops down to 45. In any case, Mass Dispel will still be slightly better because it actually has both of these options. It's around 45 second cooldown and it has a large radius, but this will give the Demon Hunters an opportunity to compete with priests, especially in Mythic Plus when the Mass Dispel is a necessary evil, let's say. And finally, I propose a small change to Darkness. Darkness has been really annoying because it's RNG and people don't like that. It's overall a 20% damage reduction on average, but it's so unreliable that people are super frustrated by it. So I propose that this changes to reducing damage taken by 10 to 20% on, on a random scale. Like this is again the RNG nature of Demon Hunter. So this on average amounts for 15% damage reduction. So in a raid setting, practically this is a nerf, because if you combine Darkness with Spirit Link, Darkness is 20% damage reduction. But with this version it will be 15% damage reduction overall on average, but it will be way more reliable and people will be way more happy to trust this cooldown and plan around it, because as of it is right now it's very annoying and very frustrating to use. If you are still here, you are a true Demon Hunter enthusiast. Thanks a lot for watching to the end. If you like the ideas that you saw in this video, consider sharing this with other people so we may spread the word and maybe help make our class better. If you like the content, consider liking and maybe subscribing to the channel for more Demon Hunter content. Thanks a lot and see you in the next one.